There are so many different throw systems in games. Whippable throws or proxy throws, throws you have to tech in different ways. What are your favorite and least favorite implementations of throws?
Oh, I love this question. I love it for a couple of reasons. One is, as a student of fighting games, I've played so many different ones that over time I start to develop opinions on what my favorite or least favorite version of any given thing is. But also I'm a grappler. I did Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for many years. And so the way throws are represented in fighting games and the contrast or the overlaps with how throws work in actual fighting is really, really fascinating to me. So thank you for asking me this, because I've wanted to talk about shit like this forever. So my favorite throw system, unsurprisingly, is the classic Guilty Gear style. Classic Guilty Gear has directions, right, forward or backward, and then hard slash. And you press that, you get your throw. It is 0 frames, which means that it is not only instant, if the throw happens on the same frame as an attack, and that attack does not have throw invulnerable properties, then the throw wins. So we call that a 0 frame throw. This is similar to how Street Fighter used to handle its throws up until about Alpha 3 or so, where you had basically instant throws and it was forward or backward and your throw button, which was usually heavy punch, heavy kick, or some characters have a medium punch or medium kick throw as well. But there's a difference in how Guilty Gear handles it, and it's that if you do a throw in old Street Fighter and you're not within range or the opponent isn't throwable, you don't get a throw whiff. What you get is the attack that corresponds to the attack you would have gotten with the button you're pressing. So if I press forward and heavy punch as Ryu in Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, and the opponent isn't throwable, then I will get that dashing 2-hit punch that he does. And if I press forward and heavy kick to throw, I'll get standing roundhouse because Ryu doesn't have a command normal on his heavy kick. The thing that I like about Guilty Gear is that it takes that system, but it says, hey, if you are pressing forward and your throw button, you can also press another attack button. And if you press a different attack button besides just hard slash, so if I press punch and hard slash, or kick and hard slash, or slash and hard slash, I will get the other attack button that I press. So not only do I get to choose to throw forward, I also get to choose which attack comes out if I cannot throw them. This is cool to me for a couple of reasons. Let's talk about that. This is an option select, and they actually teach it to you in the Xrd tutorial, which is really fantastic. I think that's super cool. But it's an option select because you're choosing to do a throw and then also choosing to do an attack in case you can't get the throw. It's a multi-layered interaction. And I think that's cool because to me, it's a cool thing for someone to be able to do to make the throws more effective. If at first you input forward and heavy, or 6H, because you just want a regular forward throw, and they're not throwable, what you're gonna get is your 6H, which is one of the biggest, heaviest attacks that any character in Guilty Gear has. If you were going for a throw, a 6H instead is usually not a good idea. Sometimes it is, but most of the time it isn't. And so there's a little learning you get to do as a new player where you realize, oh, if I pick a different attack, then I get to pick what attack comes out besides just my throw, and you can pick attacks that are more suitable for the situation at hand. So as Chipp, I will often option select my throw with 6P, which is the Guilty Gear Universal Anti-Air. It's invincible from the waist up. So that if they jumped at me and they air dashed at me because they knew I wanted to do a throw, and so they didn't want to be on the ground, I can instead get my anti-air attack, which I think is pretty cool. I think that's a fun thing for players to learn how to do that levels up your throw game. So at first, you might just learn how to do a regular throw, and then you learn how to do the option selects with throws with your character's different normals, and then eventually you learn how to deal with and call your opponent out for using those option selects themselves. So there's a lot of layered gameplay here and a lot of mastery you get to unlock, and I think that's really cool. This stands in contrast to how most modern fighting games do it these days, where it's more like a button combination for the input. You do like light punch and light kick for Street Fighter games, for example. And if the opponent isn't throwable, you get a throw whiff animation instead. Instead of getting an attack, you just get this, oh, I tried to grab you, but you weren't there, so I just whiffed, and you can get punished or counter hit or whatever. This system is clearer. It makes it much more obvious when someone is trying to throw you. When someone whiffs a throw, that is also obvious. The gameplay there is much easier to understand, but I think it looks boring. I generally think that what happens when you implement throws like this is you get a lot more whiffed throws and you get a lot more punishes for whiffed throws, but you see people throwing a lot, And it's usually just the same animation over and over and over, and it makes the game look too clearly like rock, paper, scissors. People generally have different opinions on what rock, paper, scissors means in fighting games or how much of it you want or whatever. I personally am not a huge fan of when rock, paper, scissors interactions are clearly shown as such. I think combat looks cool when it looks messy. I think it's cool when it's kind of hard to figure out what's going on and when you have to do a little extra work to understand what the systems are and then what your opponent did to take advantage of those systems to make it hard for you to see if that was a throw or a strike or whatever. And I like it when the combat doesn't clearly route back to the same interaction over and over and over. While I do think there are some advantages, especially for newer players, in learning a system that looks more like the classic Street Fighter style or even the Tekken style of throws, it doesn't create the kind of gameplay that I really like around throws. Also, I like the system specifically for Guilty Gear because in Guilty Gear, Okizeme and pressure are both really strong. Defensive systems are strong too, but if a character is rushing your shit down, you're probably going to get opened up and you're probably going to get hit unless you're really, really good. And so having 0 frame throws means that your opponent, who is generally encouraged to go in and attack you, if they mess up their spacing or their timing on anything in their pressure or their Oki, they're going to get wake up thrown because wake up throw is really effective if you're within range to get thrown. It'll beat just about anything. So Oki is strong. Players are incentivized to go for it, which means players are incentivized to go for throws because throws are really good as a countermeasure to an over-aggressive opponent. Also in classic Guilty Gear, you have variable wake-up times for different characters, right? Not all characters get up at the exact same time. So if the opponent isn't ready to do their Oki timed to your specific wake-up, they might overextend and open themselves up for a wake-up throw, which will turn things around. But calling out throws is also a really big deal because you'll get your counter hit. Especially if you can also beat the button that they option select, then you can get a really juicy payoff. And because throws are good and Guilty Gear players don't want to hold shit, Guilty Gear players are mashing throw or throw OSs constantly. So you still have a clear RPS, but you have to invest a little time into understanding exactly how it works, how it plays out for each character, the permutations of different option selects. And if you realize that your opponent is not as good as you are, as deep as you are on the throw game, you can actually take advantage of that with very real adjustments to your play because you can be super confident that your throws are going to work out more or that they aren't going to be called out as heavily or whatever. So that's why Guilty Gear throws, and to be clear, I mean old style Guilty Gear. Strive doesn't do this. They changed the throw input. They don't allow the option selects anymore. Also, I think invincible reversals losing to throws are just whack. But there are some kind of neat things about other throw systems in games. I think Tekken throws are kind of funny. The way that you have I believe it's like the left hand, the right hand, and then both hand throws, then you have to understand how to tech each throw. It's really interesting to me to see how Tekken throws work because it feels like, as someone who doesn't play that much Tekken, it looks like you have to spend a decent amount of time understanding how throws and throw breaks work so that you can then get to a level of play where throws aren't that good because everyone has already learned how to deal with throws. And the reason that's funny to me, again, as a martial artist myself, is that kind of parallels the ebb and flow of grappling in mixed martial arts. It's not that grappling is strong or weak globally, but in order to be an effective mixed martial artist, you have to learn how to grapple, even if you don't want that to be part of your game plan. Everyone has to learn how to wrestle. Everyone has to learn a pretty good Brazilian jiu-jitsu or submission grappling game in order to survive in mixed martial arts. But when you have two players who are really good at it, they often just end up swinging at each other because their grappling has essentially neutralized each other. Also, classic Virtua Fighter forced you to throw tech or throw break by inputting the specific input for the throw that your opponent did. And characters might have 5 different throw inputs. It wasn't all universal. So you had to understand not only when they wanted to throw you, but also which throw they wanted to get you with. And that meant that if they had a throw which was like obviously the best in class throw at the most advantage and the best damage and whatever, you would throw break that one. And so the second best throw became the best throw to tech. And so then you'd have to switch to that one, or you'd switch between 1 and 2 depending on what your opponent was showing you, which meant that if you wanted a really high reliability throw, then you go to the third best throw and so on and so on and so on. I've had Virtua Fighter players tell me they don't miss that system, and I'll be honest, I don't blame them, especially because I think there are a lot of crazy option selects that you had to do to cover multiple throw inputs in one throw break window. But I think the idea is really cool, again, because as a grappler, you have to understand what kind of throw your opponent wants to do in order to break it. It's not like there is a global single throw break tech in actual martial arts. If Irene is trying to get me with a hip toss or a Kouchi Gari or any other judo throw that she goes for, I have to know what she's going for, how she sets it up, and yes, Irene is a judoka, by the way. But I have to know what the throw is that she wants and how she's setting it up, and how defending against throw A sets me up to get thrown by throw B or throw C or so on. That kind of stuff is super cool, and when I get to see a version of it in a martial arts or in a fighting game, I think that's awesome. So yeah, thank you for asking this question. I am always happy to nerd out on the intricacies and subtleties of fighting game mechanics like throws. Good one.